conference is being recorded. At this time, for opening remarks and introductions, I would like to turn the conference over to Ant Evans with UFC. Please go ahead, sir.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Welcome to the UFC 151 conference call. In a second, I'll hand over to UFC President Dana White, who's joined by reigning and defending UFC light heavyweight champion Jon Jones and one of the most decorated fighters of all time, challenger Dan Henderson. It's one of the biggest fights of the year. It goes down next Saturday, September 1st at the Mandalay Bay in Las Vegas. Tickets are available right now at Ticketmaster and the Mandalay Bay box office. The pay-per-view is live, 7 in the West, 10 in the East, with prelims live on FX. With that said, I'll pass over to UFC President Dana White.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for calling in. Sorry we're running a couple minutes late here. Who has the first question?
Thank you. If you would like to ask a question, please signal by pressing the star key followed by the digit 1 on your telephone keypad. If you're using a speakerphone, please make sure your mute function is turned off to allow your signal to reach our equipment. Once again, please press star 1 to ask a question, and we'll pause for just a moment to assemble the queue. And we'll go first to Steven Marocco with MMAJunkie.com.
Hey, Dan, I was just hoping you could sort of put into context what's at stake here for Dan in his career. Do you think this is his last shot at a big title?
Who knows with this guy? I mean, he's been around forever. I was counting Couture out at 37. I thought he was, wrapping it up, and look at what he went on to do. Dan Henderson, 3-time world champion. If you look stylistically at this fight, he's a great wrestler. He's got knockout power in both hands. He's fought everybody from 170 pounds all the way up to heavyweight. He continues to impress, no matter how old he gets. And who knows? Who knows? We'll have to see how the fight goes down and how he does.
And Dan, how do you feel about this fight and sort of what it means to your career overall?
I'm excited about it. It's a fight I've been waiting for and working towards, and just to get back in there. And it's one of the final goals I have is to get that UFC belt. So yeah, I'm excited about the opportunity.
Okay, thanks very much.
And we'll go next to Heidi Fang with Fighter Corner.
My first question is for Dana. If Jon Jones can pull off this W in impressive fashion, does it really cement his status as a championship phenomenon at 205?
What's the end of that question? Would he be what?
Would he be a phenomenon? Would he really have cleaned out the division at 205?
I mean, he's been on a tear. He's beat the who's who in the sport for the last year and a half. And yes, if he went out there and wrecked Dan Henderson, that would be even more impressive than he has been, throughout the last year and a half. Nobody's ever knocked out Dan Henderson. That's what I forgot to add to his list of accolades, is a solid rock iron chin that he has, and you don't knock out Dan Henderson. So yes, if he did, that would be quite a feat.
And for Dan Henderson, would that, if he were to accomplish a win over Jon Jones, would that help make his case maybe for a UFC Hall of Fame nod?
I thought you were asking me. I'm sorry, Dan.
Oh, I am.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I mean, whether Dan Henderson wins or loses, he's a Hall of Famer.
Okay, my next question is for Dan, actually. Nobody's ever been able to take down Jon Jones. Would you be the first man to be able to accomplish that feat?
I don't know. We'll have to see, but I definitely plan on, beating him to the punch and putting him on his back during the fight. So, yeah, I'm excited, but everyone's going to have to wait and kind of see how it unfolds.
Okay, and my last question is for Jon. People have always argued that your chin is yet to be tested. Do you feel that you've experienced strong, heavy-handed punches, or is Hendo going to bring on that test?
I feel as if my chin has been tested. I don't have pride in getting my chin tested. I think getting your chin tested slows down your career. It also, makes it so you can't really take punches. I think the more you get punched, the faster and easier you start to go down. I get hit in practice. I train with Travis Brown, Andre Arlovsky, Joey Villasenor, tons of great strikers, tons of heavy-handed fighters. So yeah, I've been punched. Rashad Evans hit me pretty good. Lyoto Machida hit me pretty good. So my chin has definitely been tested, and I think that conversation kind of should be over by now.
Thank you.
And we'll go next to Adam Martin with thescore.com.
Hey there, guys. My first question is for Dan Henderson. Dan, we haven't seen you since the fight of the century against Mauricio Shogun, who last November. How has the long layoff been for you? Is it something you wanted, or would you have rather preferred to have gotten the cage a little sooner?
I would have liked to have fought a little bit earlier, but it is what it is. I took a little bit of time off right after the fight and would have been ready to go probably in April. But
okay.
I'm excited about this. This timing has been great for me.
Two in a couple of days, so just happy early birthday to you. And I was talking to your teammate Tarek Safadine a couple of days ago, and he said that at your age now you have to rest a little bit more. So if you do win the title, do you want to be like Jon Jones and defend your belt every couple months, or would you expect a longer layoff?
I don't know. It all depends. I think I'd be ready to go depending on how the fight goes. I'm typically wanting to fight 3 times a year, so it's probably about average.
Okay, and thanks, Dan. And for Jon Jones, you made some comments this week about Lyoto Machida, saying that your pay-per-view with him didn't do the best buys of all the guys you fought. How do you expect the pay-per-view with Dan Henderson to do?
I think it's going to do really well. Dan Henderson has a very strong and loyal fan base, and I'm starting to develop a pretty strong fan base. And I think this fight will do very well.
And for Dana, the same question for you. Do you expect Rashad Evans type numbers for this fight with Dan Henderson?
Yeah, I think this is the thing. Obviously, the animosity between Rashad Evans and Jones was a big deal, former training partners or whatever. But I think the real fact of the matter was people thought that he had his number, that Rashad had Jones's number, and the whole thing that went on and on. Dude, if anybody thinks that Dan Henderson couldn't win this fight, they're out of their minds. I heard that Dan Henderson was a 7-1 underdog. The guy's been around forever, has knocked out the who's who from 170 to heavyweight. And I think that people think, I think that fans who really know the sport know that Dan Henderson is a true threat to Jon Jones in this fight. And I think that's what makes it interesting and why people will buy it.
Yeah, actually, I read somewhere that James Toney was actually more favored to beat Randy Couture than Dan is to beat Jon Jones, which to me doesn't make sense. Dan, I know you probably don't really care about the betting lines, but is that any extra motivation to you to?
That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. By the way, whoever wrote that ought to be. I won't even say what should happen to them. But anyway, go ahead, Dan.
It doesn't bother me at all. I enjoy it. It's funny to me. I know what I'm capable of, and if it means proving more people wrong, that makes it even sweeter.
Okay, thanks. Just one quick one for Dana. You already said Lyoto Machida is going to fight the winner of this fight. Do you know when that fight will take place? Will it happen before the end of 2012?
It depends how this fight goes. I don't know if who's going to win or how they're going to come out of this fight or what's going to happen. So we'll see.
Thank you so much, guys. Good luck next week.
Thanks.
And once again, if you would like to ask a question, that is *1. And we'll go next to Damon Martin with MMAWeekly.com.
First question is for Jon Jones. Jon, leading into this fight, a lot of the questions to you have been about Lyoto Machida and moving to heavyweight. Are people discounting Dan Henderson way too much in this fight?
Yeah, I think they are. And I really don't think it's fair. Dan is a great warrior, and he's proven a lot in the sport. He's upset a lot of fighters that were supposedly better than him before, and it's sad that people. I'm more focused on my future than my immediate future. But even although I've answered a few of those questions, I want to set the record straight and let everyone know that everything that I do is based around Dan Henderson, my studying, my tactics, every hour of the day. Just because I answer a few questions about other things doesn't mean that my priorities aren't straight. So, but yeah, to answer your question, I think people overlook Dan Henderson, but I'm definitely not.
And I know leading into this fight, John, there have been some distractions, some good, some bad. Obviously, the Nike deal is very positive, but at the same time, there's always going to be those distractions. Has this camp gone any differently for Dan Henderson because of those things, or have you been able to focus more because obviously that's what people are talking about, and you've just been able to focus on the training?
I don't feel like there's been any extra distractions. Like I said, I won't consider my mind to be a simple one. I think I can handle talking about a few topics and still know what my goal and objective is. There's a little bit more controversy around me this training camp, but my teammates don't care about what I'm driving or if I can drive, or no one cares about anything. We're just working hard, man. They don't care about Nike. I came into the room with boxes of Nike and handed it all out to all my guys and all that stuff, and now there's no more Nike conversation going on in the room or anything. It's all about Dan Henderson for all of us.
Okay. And one question for Dana. I know, Chael Sonnen made a statement last night saying that he believes Dan Henderson is the greatest pound-for-pound fighter of all time, and maybe we could have that argument with Anderson Silva, but is there a reason why you believe Dan doesn't get that conversation started more often when you look at what he's done over his career, that more people don't mention him as one of the greatest fighters of all time, along with an Anderson Silva?
I do think that's crazy, Yeah. Dan Henderson has been around forever. Like I said, he's fought the who's who. I mean, this guy fought Carlos Newton. I mean, he's been around forever, and he's fought everybody at every weight class. And he's one of these guys that will always step up and take a fight, no matter who it is. He's knocked out the who's who. And if you look at his skill set, like I said, he's got an iron chin, never been knocked out. He's a great wrestler, and he's got knockout power in both hands. I just don't know how you discount this guy, and you look at his... Think about Rampage, right? Think about how hard Rampage hits and the people that Rampage has knocked out. Him and Dan Henderson stood in front of each other and went toe-to-toe for 5 rounds, banging each other's chins. I mean, this guy can go. The amount of disrespect by the media and fans for Dan Henderson is ridiculous.
And last question, Dana, is in relation to that. Dan had his first fight in the UFC back in, I think it was 1998, and we talk about Frank Mir, hanging around the heavyweight division, the top of the division for 10 years. When you look at Dan, who's been basically a champion for the better part of 15 years, I mean, should he be in the conversation with like a Randy Couture as far as longevity, a guy that has been able to start so long ago and still be relevant in 2012?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, there's no doubt about it. Dan Henderson is probably one of the most overlooked fighters and underrated fighters in the sport today.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, guys.
All right, buddy.
And we'll go to John O'Regan with Fighters Only magazine.
Hi, guys. First question's for Jon Jones. I've got 2 questions for Jon and 1 for Dana. The first one's for Jon. Can you give us like a sneak preview, like a little insight into what you're going to be wearing out into the octagon and in the octagon on Saturday night? Like, are we going to be seeing like Nike board shorts or Valitudo shorts or anything?
You want to know about the apparel? Wait, I don't understand your question. I'm sorry.
It's going to be the debut for the. It's going to be the debut for the Nike deal, right? So I'm thinking, are you going to be like wearing some, some Nike board shorts, or I just wondered if you could give us any kind of a sneak preview there.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. There's going to be, there's going to be like uniforms, and I think there'll be like a different outfit for weigh-ins, and then there's like a shoe, and hats and shirts and t-shirts and jumpsuits and all that, like corners and knee and everything like that. So yeah, that'll be an official, well put together uniform.
And is this going to be signature Jones stuff, like the shoe and everything? Is that especially for you?
No, I don't think so. I saw the signature shoe, and it's pretty sweet. But this is just kind of a package they kind of put together. But it's going to be pretty nice, pretty professional.
Cool. Okay, cool. Second question for you is, I saw something recently where you said that Chael Sonnen's build up to the Anderson fight, you said that a lot of what Sonnen came out with, he crossed the line, he was racist, and you felt that he embarrassed America. But that kind of a build up that he had with Anderson, would you prefer that kind of a build up when you're coming up to a fight, or do you like this kind of a build-up that's very kind of quiet? You know, because Dan Henderson doesn't sort of trash at all. You really don't hear anything off him until you kind of getting in the cage with him.
When you say Dan Henderson don't talk trash at all, I have to totally disagree with you on that. You know, the guy definitely made quite a few statements about my style and my personality that was unnecessary, uncalled for, and kind of came out of nowhere. So I have to disagree with you on that part. And whether a fighter talks or not doesn't really matter. You know, I give my all in every training session, and I go out there with the intentions to win in the most devastating fashion, despite how respectful or disrespectful the fighter was. But, you know, when a fighter just talk trash and insult me, I use it, and it motivates me to not want to lose to that guy even more.
Okay, thanks. And one question for Dana, please. Just following on from that Nike deal, is it exciting to you at all that Jon's been picked up by Nike now? Do you feel like it's a watershed moment for the sport or anything, or is it just another sponsor?
And this is the conference operator. Dana White's line has disconnected.
Okay. Okay, that's everything then. Okay, thanks, guys.
And we'll go next to Reed Forgrave with FoxSports.com.
Hey, a question for Jon. You talked about possible Machida fight as basically high risk, low reward. And I'm wondering, with you coming in as such a heavy favorite for this fight, and with the Nike deal, you're kind of, your stature is growing a lot right now. What's the risk reward for you in this fight?
With Dan Henderson, it's high risk and high reward, definitely. Dan Henderson is somebody who has a Pride belt, and he has the Strikeforce belt, and I feel like I'm fighting the Pride champion, the current Pride champion, the current Strikeforce champion in some ways. He left both organizations on top, if I'm correct. So I'm really fighting to get some of that credibility that he has. I don't take his age in consideration whatsoever. He's just as a monster as Rampage or all the guys that I fought in 2011. So beating Dan Henderson is very, very important to me. He beat Fedor. Fedor is one of my idols. So to have Dan Henderson in my win column, it means the world to me.
What about the idea of, if you beat him, you have to go into like rematch territory, and that this is, you have officially cleaned out the division. I know you don't want to look ahead too much, but what would be next for you if you do beat him? I've
talked past Henderson a little bit too much this training camp, and I kind of regret it. Dan Henderson is a monster, bro. He's a lion, and I don't want to talk past him anymore. I'm closing on Judgment Day here, and it's time for me to just really focus in on Dan in every way, shape, and form. So I'm not going to even answer questions about after Dan.
I'll examine just one extra question for Dan. Dan, I'm curious, what do you see as kind of the storyline of this fight? Is it, the old versus the new? Is it, two different styles of fighting? What do you see as the storyline going in?
Well, I think everybody seems to have painted the picture of the real old guy fighting the younger guy that's been tearing everybody up, and for me, it's more about two different styles fighting against each other, more of a chess match, and Jon Jones is a guy that he's a tougher one to figure out than most guys. He uses his body style real well with his fighting style, and it's, for me, that's a fun challenge to try to figure that out. So it's more about that and the styles rather than the age. I feel great. My conditioning and training camp went perfect. So I'm feeling great.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
And we'll go next to Dave Meltzer with Wrestling Observer.
Okay, this is actually for both guys, but it has to do with the fight with Shogun Rua, and I guess I'll ask Dan first. When you came out of that fight, that was quite the war. I mean, what kind of lessons did you take out of that fight on maybe what you did right or what you did wrong, and how that would help you prepare for your next fight?
I don't know. You know, it was a high-paced fight, pretty close from the beginning, and I felt like I got a little tired halfway through the fight, trying to finish him, and maybe one or two more punches, and being a little bit more busy, and the fight would have been stopped, or maybe I should have paced myself. Who knows? I just know that I was out there. I knew I thought I had him hurt and wanted to go after him and try to finish him. And I don't know. I came out of it feeling physically pretty well. I had hurt my thumb in the middle of the fight. Other than that, my body felt great afterwards. But I don't know. I don't know how many other lessons I learned. I'm sure there's a couple that small ones that I could, probably take a while to think about. But for the most part, I just knew that I had gotten through a fight, a pretty tough fight.
And for Jon, I mean, it's been brought up in the call, that Dan has had this long career and he's fought a who's who in the sport, all kinds of tough guys, and no one's ever knocked him out. I mean, as far as from your standpoint, I mean, are you looking to be the first person to be able to do that, or do you feel that it's just like that's one of those things? Okay, I've got to figure out a different way to beat him than perhaps a way that would beat a normal human being, so to speak.
I really don't. I don't believe anyone's invincible. Like I said earlier, when you've fought him for such a long time and you've taken so many big shots, I think your ability to take big shots kind of fades away. And I've watched Dan Henderson's career, his whole career, about 6 times now, throughout, from fight 1 to where he's at right now. And I realize some of the strikes that make him fall. And so when people talk about how he's never been TKO'd and he's never been knocked out, a lot of times when they drop him, they rush into him, and he has a stand-up that he does pretty well. And we've really dissected a lot of things where people go wrong when it's come time to finish him. I think Anderson did a good job controlling them and really stabilizing them and making shots count. I think a lot of the fighters that he's fought also didn't have the necessary ground and pound to finish the game either. So and another thing, people get them hurt, and then they seem like they gas out and they can't finish the deal. And one thing I know I won't do is gas out. I really believe that I'll hit him in that spot that makes him fall, and then I'll finish the job. And that's something no one else has been able to do, and that's something I have great pride in doing.
Do you look forward to, or are you kind of curious as far as matching Greco-Roman wrestling with him at some point during the fight?
It's not a wrestling match, and I don't have any extra pride in trying to defeat Dan in wrestling. With all due respect, Dan is an Olympian, but he's not the age he was when he competed at his highest level anymore. I studied Shogun Rua 1,000 times, and Shogun Rua is not a wrestler. And Shogun Rua took Dan Henderson down with ease, and I've wrestled since I was 14 years old, so I have no doubt in my mind that I'll be able to take Dan Henderson down. So yeah, but I don't have any chip on my shoulder when it comes to Dan and his wrestling. I had more of a chip when it came to Rashad Evans and his wrestling because of how often he takes people down and how great his takedown defense is.
Dan, do you kind of have any comments on that?
No, I pretty much it's right on. It's not a wrestling match. When you're going out trying to knock people down, you're going to get taken down sometimes if you're not careful. So, it's one of those things that that happens, and at the same time, I try to use my wrestling, to complement my MMA, and that's pretty much what I try to do, and defensive and offensive. So, I don't have any any type of competition going with anybody in MMA for my wrestling that I use. It's a fight out there, and the MMA part of it is going to decide who's the best fighter out there.
Okay, thanks you guys very much.
And we'll go next to Richard Hunter with KRLD FM Radio Dallas.
Yes, two questions, one for Dan, one for Jon. Dan, first off, is there anything in this fight that you feel like you have to do in order to win? Do you feel like you have to take Jones down? Do you feel like you have to connect an H-bomb? Or do you feel like you've got enough ways to win that one of those disciplines could be completely absent of your game plan and still get the victory?
Well, there's probably a number of things I have to do to win the fight. I need to at least hit him. I need to, get in and control him. Same thing he needs to do to me. Except for I don't want to stand on the outside and let him use the length and just kind of hit me when I'm too far away to hit him. It wouldn't be too fun of a fight for me if I'm standing there and he can hit me, I can't hit him. So that's probably the biggest thing that I need to handle is just that length.
And, Jon, I guess both of you are in a unique position here knowing that Lyoto Machida is the next challenger. We don't always see that in the UFC. And your comments this week about the idea of fighting Machida have been based partly on a low-grossing pay-per-view the first time you guys fought. Is that something business-wise that you have always kept a close eye on with your career, analyzing pay-per-view numbers and that sort of thing, or is that something that has come, fairly recently in terms of you focusing on that part of the out-of-the-cage business where your career is concerned?
Well, not to be cliche, but I'm definitely only focusing on Dan Henderson at this point, and not really worried about Lyoto Machida. But when it comes to just the pay-per-view conversation in general, it's like I fight for honor and integrity. I fight to be the best. I try to keep the martial arts spirit alive as much as possible. At the same time, I'm a 2012 warrior, and I fight to provide for my family. This is a sport where we don't have a retirement plan and things like that. We don't have insurance for the rest of our lives. So, the money that I make today is the money I'll draw from when I'm 80 years old if I ever get sick, or I have to pay for several colleges already because I have a lot of kids. So it's like thinking about the business aspect. The fans they're so upset. They're like, oh, what does being the best have to do with pay-per-views? And I think people have it all twisted. Right now I'm on the phone with you reporters because you guys want to make money. You guys want to write the best stories so you can make money. We all fight to make money, quite frankly. So if I was to not evolve with my time and be completely ignorant to finances, pay-per-view sales, taxes, investing, it would be a shame. And I refuse to be a broke athlete when I retire. So, I don't apologize for being aware of pay-per-view sales and being business savvy. It's 2012, and there's a lot of broke guys out there right now who was famous at one point and all that type of stuff. So, yes, it wasn't something that I originally came into the sport with, but, realize that I'm evolving and I'm changing and I'm growing as a person, and I can't apologize for that. If I was the same person that I was when I joined the sport, I would be failing.
All right, thank you.
And once again, that is *1 if you would like to ask a question. And we'll go next to Ron Krupp with Inside MMA.
Hey guys, a quick question for Dan Henderson. Dan, I know you've touched on this briefly, but I was wondering if you could go into a few more details. You've really fought some of the best in their prime. Where do you feel Jones ranks with some of the talented fighters that you've faced over the years?
He's definitely probably up there in the top of the game. As far as the guys that I fought, I fought them over different eras. All those different guys, and it's tough to compare sometimes when you have different times going on and with the sport evolving so much as it has over the last 15 years. I think Jon Jones has improved more than anybody that I've seen in the last 2 or 3 years, and he's going to continue to improve and be tougher to beat, as he gets more experience in the sport. So, it's he's definitely going to be right up there with the top of the guys that I fought.
Great, thanks. And then just a quick question for Jon. Jon, now that you've defended your title several times, has the mental aspect of going into a title fight gotten easier or changed? And if so, how?
Yeah, it's changed a lot. The biggest thing that one of the biggest things that, well, some of the positive ways that it's changed is being more familiar with suffering, embracing the suffering more, not feeling sorry for yourself. Knowing the numbers that you had, like last camp on the treadmill and things like that, on the weightlifting and all that, and then, always looking to beat those numbers, and then you gotta, because I fight so much, I feel as if I need to always figure out new ways to be innovative in my training. That way, my passion remains on fire. So, some of the ways, I find training, studying a lot easier now. Like anything, if you study all the time, you could get at anything that you put your mind to. So I find that, when me and my coaching staff get together, it doesn't take as many reps watching footage anymore because we know how to study, what to look at, what to stare at. So I guess the biggest issue is just coming up with new ways to keep it fun and interesting at all times. Always looking for new muscles to tweak or new moves to learn or new ways to suffer. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
absolutely it does. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in Vegas.
And we'll go next to Eric Columbia with Fox 40.
Hey, I just have 2 questions for Jon. Jon, it's been a tough time for you off the or out of the octagon. Just how much have you grown as a person in the last 4 months in dealing with that?
I've grown a lot, man. I've grown a lot. It's just, life is life, and I think what people don't realize is that just because you're a pro athlete doesn't mean you're necessarily a professional, and we are all humans, and we all do things that we regret, but it happened, and I'm moving forward in my life, and I'm actually grateful that it happened because things could have been so much worse for me. I could be sitting around in jail somewhere thinking about what I ruined. I could be on trial from injuring someone or something like that. So I'm grateful that the main price I had to pay was extreme embarrassment and the ruin an extremely expensive car and things like that. But it couldn't have happened at a better time in my life. I've grown, and I'm going to continue to grow from the situation, and I'll be forever better. I'll be forever more responsible. I'll be a better man because of it all. So we all make mistakes, and really only God can judge me, and I'm moving forward, full speed ahead.
And a couple weeks ago, I happened to catch that the documentary that was about you leading up to the Shogun fight, and it's just interesting seeing your progression during each fight and each championship defense. How have you dealt with the whole, I guess, like the rise to superstardom from that day a couple years ago until now?
I've dealt with it pretty well. I'm definitely growing as a man, and I'm growing in a lot of ways. More publicity, more people waiting to see me fall, more support from around the world. But the biggest thing that hasn't changed, and I think it's really the key to stability, is the people in my life. One of me and Greg Jackson's first conversations when I came to Jackson's was, not about whether I would make it, but how I would handle it when I made it. So, he's really prepared me from the time since I was like 22. He's been preparing me on dealing with all this stuff, and the ways he's seen champions go down is, they start listening to too many people. They start changing up their training. They start bringing in new people. They start believing they're the greatest. They start, they start doing way too much. And one thing that I can say is that I have the same woman, I have the same coaches, I have the same nutritionists, the same teammates. My relationship with all my friends and family and team has gotten closer. I think a lot of times when fighters grow, they start leaving people behind, and I haven't done that. So I have a very strong support base, and they say you're only as good as people around you, and I have solid people in my life. So I think I'll be able to ride this train for a long time.
All right. Good luck to both you guys. And Johnny still got a big fan base in the 607.
Ow!
And we'll take a follow-up question from Steven Marocco with MMAJunkie.com.
Hey, I just wanted to ask Dan about his thoughts about what Jon was saying about paying attention to the business aspect of fighting. Is that something you've done in your career? Do you pay attention to pay-per-view buys when you're looking at matchups and stuff like that?
Well, you always pay attention to them. I mean, it's something you always hope the numbers are going to stay up there, and especially in the last few years with the economy being lower, I felt like I've been fortunate enough to be in a sport that's been on the rise and growing so dramatically over the last few years during that time, and it's been nice to have a solid job during that time when a lot of people are losing their jobs because of the economy. So, obviously, the pay-per-view numbers always could be better, no matter how many buys you sell. But for me, it's been being a part of MMA and growing, to love the sport so well it's been great. But on top of that, to have a solid job that I knew that the money is just going to get better over the course of time. So, it's been nice to be able to be a part of that.
Is that something that you prepared for? Like when fighting ends, have you prepared for that moment when fighting ends? Do you transition into something else in your life?
I'm sure I'll always be involved in MMA, and I've gotten some things set up to where I will be involved in other things as well. But I'll always be involved in MMA and coaching guys and just for the love of the sport.
And one quick pot stirrer here. He's called you an older version of Rashad Evans. Any reactions to that?
I'm probably an older version to a lot of people, but I don't think I have the same style as Rashad. We're both wrestlers, but totally different wrestling styles, and I don't know. It don't matter to me. I guess I don't have too many comments about it.
Yeah. And Jon, maybe a little bit clarification. Why did you make that comment? Were you feeling was it Dan's earlier comment about the sloppy comment or anything like that, or were you feeling offended by that?
Well, the reason I made the comment, I went into this fight with extreme respect for Dan, and I still have respect for Dan. That's why I was so disappointed when he started making fun of, calling me goofy elbows and young kid and sloppy. He's a sloppy fighter, and all these insults back to back to back to start off the whole fight. I was just like, oh, so this is how we're gonna play, huh? So I do respect Dan Henderson a lot. I mean, he's a guy's guy. I just saw a picture of him holding a rattlesnake recently that he found in his backyard. It's like things like that. I respect Dan. I would want to take him to the gun range with me. He's that type of dude. But at the same time, when insults get thrown out, it causes me to speak more honestly. And, I spoke my mind, and I really do feel like he's an older version of Rashad. Rashad Evans, he had an extreme overhand right. It was lightning fast to the point where you don't even see it coming. He actually caught me with that overhand right during our fight, and I did not see it coming. It was so incredibly fast. Dan Henderson has an overhand right. Rashad's overhand right is his main weapon. Dan Henderson's overhand right is his main weapon. The difference is the extreme speed difference. And Rashad Evans, not only did you have to worry and train for a boxing match your whole camp, but you also had to worry about that double leg takedown. Dan Henderson has solid wrestling. He has a very good low, bear hug from the lower bag with little knee trips, a few Greco-Roman throws, So, it's just like, I find myself preparing for some similarities there. The difference is, Rashad has a strong cardio. He can bring it for 5 hard rounds. I don't think Dan can do that. So, it may be a slight insult, but it was everything I say. It was sheer truth.
And then, what was your intention behind saying he was sloppy and stuff like that?
Well, I believe that it was to answer questions about where I see openings, and I think at times he is a little sloppy with his striking, and that would be certain opportunities for me to land some strikes. It's what I see when I watch tapes. I'm sloppy sometimes too. It's not anything of an insult. It's what it is.
And your reaction to him saying that you can't last 5 rounds?
Sometimes my cardio could have been a little better, but I think a lot of that is attributed to the pace of the fight sometimes, and I've had some pretty good paces going in a few of the fights, and I'm not worried about my cardio for this fight at all.
Any chance of you guys going to the gun range after this fight?
I like to shoot.
Maybe archery better for you?
Yeah, I like archery a little bit better.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
And we'll go next to Brett Okamoto with ESPN.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking the time. A couple questions for John. Something that you said earlier, that you weren't going to apologize for being business savvy and looking at things like pay-per-view numbers. I'm just curious, is that something that's happened over the last year when you really kind of became a star and you're headlining cards, or did you get into the sport telling yourself that this is something I like to do, but it's also a business. I need to make sure that I support my family and all this. I mean, is that something that happened early on, or is that something that kind of progressed over time as you got to be a bigger deal in the UFC?
Well, it's a mixture between two things. It's been very well documented that my whole reason for picking up MMA gloves in the first place was because I had a kid on the way. So, I haven't lost sight of my original goal. My original goal was to be successful in my parents' eyes. My brothers are both in the NFL, and I was the college dropout out of the group between me and my brothers. So I always had a fear of not making it and being a failure and having to go back to my parents and borrow money. I'm from a long line of family members that need to borrow money from their parents, and I don't want to be that person. So originally, I joined the sport because I wanted to make it. It was a survival move. When I met my coaches, it became more than money. It became about warrior spirit. And so I can sit here and truthfully say that I had both. I have business savvy and I have a true warrior spirit. If you can't be one thing, you gotta have many sides to you. And I have many sides to me. I have a business side, I have a religious side, I have a fun side, I have many sides. And so me being business savvy, I think it's sad how the fans out kind of attack me about it. It's like, dude, I don't think they realize that all their favorite fighters care about the bank account.
How did they attack you? Obviously, I'm guessing Twitter. What were some of the comments that were made? Just that they're looking for kind of this romantic idea that the guys only fight just for the pleasure of it and not for the money?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it is. I think I got questions. It really doesn't matter because I really can't afford to let that weigh on me. But at the same time, it's just I just want them to be educated and to know that it's a business. We don't. In the original days, guys did fight because they just loved it that much, and I truly just love it that much. I really do. But I don't want to have to fight. When I'm really old, I want to be done at a certain age. And I want to do things right. They say, NFL stands for not for long. Guys I'm sure they're really passionate about football, but they don't go out there and put their bodies on the line because they love it that much. They do it because they love it. They want to be the best, and they want to provide for their families. So it's just like, I just want the fans to know that it's so much more than just fighting because you love it. If I didn't love it, I wouldn't be the champion. I love it, but I also love making my wife happy.
Yeah, this might sound like a silly question given your age and the fact that you haven't taken a lot of punishment in your career, but you just did mention that you do see yourself walking away at a certain age. I mean, do you have a plan in terms of your career and the amount of money you want to make and the amount of years you want to do it? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, my ideal is to fight 4 or 3 times a year, despite how big things get. Always put my belt on the line, and try to conquer records fast. I'm creeping up on Tito's record in almost a year and a half time, and so I'll never be a champion that sits on the belt. And even though I've been mentioning choosing fights lately, that doesn't mean that I'll sit on the belt. That doesn't mean I won't fight people. I just, throw my 2 cents out there and what I think is right. So, I want to go out there. I want to try to blow through records. I want to try to do it at a young age while I'm still in my prime and while my brain is very well intact, and then get out of there and explore other avenues at a young age.
Last question for me, and I appreciate the time. What was more exciting, winning the belt or finding out that you had signed the Nike sponsorship?
Excuse me?
What was more exciting to you when it happened, winning the belt or finding out for the first time that you had signed the Nike sponsorship?
Yeah, winning the belt was the biggest thing for me. It was definitely the biggest thing for me. Gigantic, man. To be considered the best in the world at something is a true honor. I thought that was bigger than me. And, when I did it, it meant everything. Nike was a great goal. It's something that I believed in and that made it come to pass. And I'm extremely grateful for it. It's reassuring to myself that, when you really believe in your heart you can do something, you can do it. It's like I couldn't do push-ups there in a Nike deal. It was kind of like, law of attraction and me doing the right things. But to answer your question, winning the belt meant more to me than anything, and it still does.
Great. Well, thank you very much, guys. Good luck to both of you.
And we'll go next to Luke Thomas with MMAfighting.com.
Jon, this is the first opponent you've faced who is on TRT. I want to get your comments about that, and then more generally, what is your perception or belief about TRT in the sport more largely?
Well, that's a pretty controversial topic, man. I'm not sure I should go there or not. Basically, I believe that if you're healthy enough to play a sport, you shouldn't take any performance enhancement drugs or anything for testosterone. It's like, fighters make a lot of money in their 20s, they make a lot of money in their 30s, and when they get in their 40s, unfortunately, you're in your 40s. You should fight the way you fight. When you're in your 40s, switch your style up to stay in the game. I don't think you should be able to take a drug to pretty much give you the strength of a 30-year-old again. That's like me saying, "Oh, I'm not as fast twitch as I was when I was 20. Let me just take something to be 20 again." I think things like TRT and steroids and things should be for the sick or for the normal people that really need the drugs. But athletes, if you're an athlete, be an athlete. I don't think anyone should have anything that enhances them.
Great, thanks.
And we'll take our final question from Jordan Cisawa with TSN 1290.
Congratulations, Jon, on that Nike deal. It's fantastic. I agree with the business savvy stuff that you've been saying. And you come from a fantastic camp over at Jackson's. But where I want to go with this is over to Dan. Dan, I've had the pleasure of being up to Team Quest a few times, watched you prep for the UFC 100 fight. Tell me and tell the fans, what is Team Quest? How have you guys been growing as a team? I'm watching a whole bunch of excellent young fighters coming out of there. And then also talk about branding with Clinch Gear. You've we see everything Strike Force. It's huge. Where are you going with Team Quest, Clinch Gear? How has your fight camps changed, and who's up at Quest right now prepping you for John Bones?
Team Quest is something, that it means a lot to me. I started that with Randy originally a long time ago, and it's grown to be like a big family. And we have a few gyms opened up here and there, and it typically has guys that are wanting to improve, and the guys that have bad attitudes don't really stick around too long or don't make it too long. We've got a great group of guys, and a pretty international group as well. A bunch of guys from all over, Belgium, France, Brazil, and here and there from, guys coming in from all over the world. And this camp, I've got a couple long guys in here. Cyril Diabate is pretty long and tall, and really great with his striking, and another tall guy I got in is Christian Tumbu Tonton. The guy, he's a Bellator light heavyweight champ, and my normal guys, Dave Herman and Tarek Safadine, just fought over the weekend, and a few other guys, and everybody kind of helps each other out and pushes, and just like a lot of other teams, but I feel like we're a big family.
Now further to that, I know again with John's team, they sit down, they review video. Are you guys on that same kind of thing? Do you sit down, review video, go over your numbers from last fight camps with the weights you've been lifting and all that, or is this more grit?
No, I sit down and watch video with my coaches and some of the teammates sometimes, and look at things and come up with a game plan. For the most part, that beyond the obvious things of what needs to be done is with a game plan against someone like Jon Jones, and it's been a great camp, and I do look at my numbers as far as my cardio and cross training goes, with the heart rates and everything else that goes into that, and compare it to previous training camps, and everything's good way ahead of schedule for this camp.
Perfect, thanks, and good luck to both of you guys.
Thank you.
That does conclude our question and